This is WJFF, community-supported radio for the Catskills in Northeast Pennsylvania. Good afternoon. It's 12:30, and I'm WJFF General Manager Adam Weinreich. You've joined us on the fifth day of our Summer Pledge Drive. And as part of our Summer Pledge Drive, it's become our tradition to hold what we call community check-ins, where we invite groups, organizations, nonprofits from around the WJFF listening area to come to our studios and share with us what they're all about, what their summer schedule is, and how you can get involved and how you can help them. I'm pleased to be joined in the studio right now by Rabbi Samuel Fishbain from Congregation Beth Sinai, the White Lake Torah Center. Rabbi, welcome to WJFF.
Thank you for the very generous introduction.
You're very welcome. It's great to have you here, and I'm hoping you can just sort of give our listeners a very basic introduction to the White Lake Torah Center and to what you do there.
Thank you very much. I'm the rabbi of the White Lake Synagogue. I arrived here in 1972, and some of our congregants and community members prefer to add a title to the rabbi of the White Lake Synagogue, as the title should read Chief Rabbi of the town of Bethel. And with enthusiasm, they installed a sign, a large 4-foot, light-foot sign, which read Samuel J. Fishbain, Chief Rabbi of the town of Bethel. And it didn't take long for reaction to the sign to come about. And one gentleman, an inhabitant, a resident of White Lake, of Bethel, Kanyanga Lake, came forward and he said to me, "Rabbi, I saw that sign, Chief Rabbi town of Bethel. Can I ask you just exactly who made you the Chief Rabbi of the town of Bethel?" I told him, "The sign painter." When I arrived in 1972, it was unfortunately a very tragic moment in the history of the town of Bethel insofar as worshiping in synagogues. The town of Bethel, White Lake, Kanyanga Lake, which it's also referred to. I tell people not to try to pronounce Kanyanga Lake because they might have quite a dentist bill trying to pronounce Kanyanga. And it was when my predecessor was removed, was taken from us in the prime of his life. And at my inaugural address, which was a very impressive one, we had present some of the most prominent public servants, Chief Justice Lawrence Cook, the Sheriff of the town of Sullivan County, Joseph Wasser, amongst others. And I drew then, because of arrived at such a tragic moment, I drew a parallel which was not long past the tragic assassination of John F. Kennedy. And when Lyndon Johnson took office, I drew a parallel between his remarks when he took office. He said with solemnity and with almost tears in his eyes, he said, "All that I have, as I take office today, as to head your country, all that I have, I would gladly have given gladly, not to be standing here today, to have your John Kennedy, your president, with you." And I also repeated, "All that I have, I would have given gladly, not to be standing here today, to have your rabbi with you." But then, of course, every sermon and every address has to have a few ingredients, must have some humor in it. And we were so fortunate to have Justice Lawrence Cook and Sheriff Wasser on the dais. I mentioned that is fortunate and privileged we are to have such a dignified and prestigious group of public servants. But the order of the speakers themselves could have proven to have been disastrous. I said, but thank God it all worked out well. I said, because if I had been the first speaker, followed by His Honor Supreme Court Justice Cook, and then the sheriff, I would have come before the judge, and the sheriff would have been after us. But I said, this way it worked out very well, because first the sheriff spoke, and then His Honor Judge Cook spoke, and I spoke. So I said, the judge came before me, and both of us were after the sheriff. a synagogue, a sermon must have in it, to keep the attention of the worshipers and listeners, must have three ingredients. It must have humor, a joke, a story, and a lesson from the Bible, from the prophets, from the Talmud. So if you have the same audience, these are the hazards of the vocational hazards of the rabbinate, of being a minister, of the pulpit. If you have the same audience, so a joke, a humor, you must wait at least 12 months, 1 year, because that they listen carefully and retain it for 1 year. After a year, from my experience, you can repeat the same joke again. A story that they do, and with a half an year, that they retain for 6 months. After 6 months, you can repeat the same story again without any difficulty, any problems. A message from the Bible, from the Talmud, and from the prophets, that as soon as you addressed it and said it before the audience, you can repeat it immediately. They didn't even hear it the first time. Tales out of the synagogue. We moved to our new quarters in 1975.
And that was what, just three or 4 years after you arrived?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Moved to our new quarters. And unfortunately, those who sought to create problems for us, there are always those that can't leave things well enough, reported us to the building department, and that we did not have a certificate of occupancy. So we were served with a summons and with a notice that every sign indicating that this is a house of worship must be removed, otherwise we'll be faced with $50 a day fine. The headlines in the Times Herald record read, Orthodox rabbi faces charges for services. Many ask me, which is a common question, Rabbi, what branch of Judaism does your synagogue belong to? Orthodox, conservative, or Reform? So my answer is that I'm an Orthodox rabbi with a conservative congregation, and the membership is Reform. We attract actually all people from all walks of life, and they all feel comfortable by us. And once they sit down and are part of the service, they have no idea exactly what branch of Judaism we belong to. We even we reach out to everybody. On the 25th, there is country doctors and there's country rabbis. And the difference is between a city rabbi and a country rabbi. A city rabbi, his duties are limited. He's a man that's learned and versed in Jewish law and in Talmud, and he can adjudicate all questions in Jewish law and can disseminate words of pearls of wisdom from the Torah and from the Bible and from the Talmud. But insofar as worldly matters, that they're familiar with him as well, because they live there all year long. Here, they arrive here for 2 months, and they turn to me for a doctor, a lawyer, a mechanic, a good word by a police officer, a judge. And in our 25th anniversary, there was a write-up in the Times Herald record that the rabbi of the town of Bethel, in his 25 years of service to the community, he's been called upon for such diverse topics, ranging from prayers for the desperately ill to advice on traffic tickets. And one such gentleman, there are those that come to us in joy and happiness, a wedding ceremony, and those that come to us, unfortunately, when they lost a beloved member of the family, a father, a mother. And according to tradition, they recite memorial prayers for 12 months, for an entire year. And then on the anniversary of the passing, we take the opportunity to introduce them to more than just the memorial prayer. It's not religion, unfortunately. May whoever created the word ceremony, may his name be blotted out forever. There's more to Judaism than just ceremonies, just a ceremony. So we introduce them to the many, many commandments and the way of life of Judaism. It's a way of joy and a way of living and a way of satisfaction as well. To enjoy life and to appreciate, and to have a goal in front of you, to strive, to constantly to grow spiritually, to grow emotionally, to grow. And one particular gentleman who came to us and struggled, he actually had a big dentist bill because the memorial prayer is not written in a traditional Hebrew, it's in Aramaic. So until he was able to memorize by rote the memorial prayer, the Kaddish, it took quite some time. And that sometimes, many times, turns them off, because that's what Judaism is all about. They leave. We took the opportunity to tell them that if you're here to honor your mother's memory, your father's memory, there's much more to than that. You can accrue so many merits for your soul by familiarizing yourself with living Judaism and what it means.
Rabbi, you came here, you said, in 1972.
Yes.
So you were, 11 years old, 12 years old at the time?
How sweet of them, my goodness gracious.
And it's now, you've been here then over 40 years, if my math is correct. Math is not a strong point for me.
Yes. It's exactly 44 years since we arrived.
44 years. 44 years. So how has your congregation changed? How have you seen the community change around your synagogue?
A very, very crucial question. When I arrived, the town of Bethel had only a summer synagogue, a small summer synagogue. Those that were here for the bungalow colonies, though it generally attracts those that are more observant and versed in Judaism. They're looking for a place to pray not only on the holiday, but every Saturday and daily services as well. But we realized that there are members in the community that there's a crying need for year-round synagogue, because a number of them are Sabbath observers, and it's not permitted according to the statutes that were handed out in Sinai thousands of years ago. It's not permitted to drive on Saturday, so there was a need for a year-round synagogue here. We opened our doors year-round when we arrived in 1972. And those that we attracted were not only laymen, but they were professionals and ministers and rabbis as well. In fact, one particular minister, a rabbi, who was a minister in a strictly conservative synagogue, where they had their summer services only, and only a Friday evening service and Saturday morning, he would attend regular services all week long, 21 services a week, 3 times a day, and the lectures and the study groups, etc. And when he left, he said a very few meaningful words. He said he wanted to thank us for being here, and there's a verse in Deuteronomy, in Devarim, in Akeb, a verse that a man cannot subsist on bread alone, but only from the word that comes forth from the mouth of the Lord. And he continued, he said, the bread alone, that is provided by his position in Temple Bethel and White Lake. But the word of the Lord he received in our temple and synagogue as well. As I began to mention the tales out of the synagogue, there was a gentleman who came to recite memorial prayers for his mother, and we took the opportunity to introduce him to living Judaism, not just prayers for the dead. It's a living Judaism. So when the year passed, he already continued growing on him. He was observing the laws of kashrut, many festivals he was observing, and so forth. And then, down the calendar, a few years later, he lost his father. For his mother, he weathered storm, ice, exhaustion, heat, everything to make sure he was there for every service to recite prayers for his mother. For his father, it seemed shortly after his father's passing, he disappeared. And I want to be tactful about it, diplomatic, and not to pull the strings too far. I was looking for an opportunity to run into him informally, and the Almighty presented the opportunity. I met him on the street one day. I said, "Oh, Steve, my goodness, is it good to see you?" I said, "You know, we all miss you, and I think we enjoyed having you, and you enjoyed coming. Whatever you did for your mother," I said, "your father deserves the same." He said, "I'll tell you, Rabbi, truthfully, the way you came across in the merit that I not only recited the memorial prayers, but I became more versed in Judaism. In that merit, there accrued merits for my mother, and she, from that, it made sure that she should find herself a place in heaven." Now, to tell you the truth, my father and mother didn't get along. If I'll do the same for him that I did for her, they'll continue fighting. Let him stay where he is. Let her stay where she is.
We're speaking with Rabbi Samuel Fishbain from Congregation Beth Israel, for Congregation Beth Sinai, I apologize, the White Lake Torah Center in Conneaunga Lake, New York, Kauneonga. Look at that, huh? It's part of WJFF's Community Check-In series. And we are interviewing groups and organizations from throughout the WJFF listening area to find out what they're all about and what their upcoming event schedule is. And we'll be talking with the rabbi about upcoming events in just a moment. But we want to invite you now to call WJFF and make a donation to our Summer Fund Drive. This is how we raise the money we need to keep the radio station on the air. Simply by asking you to voluntarily call us and donate a few dollars. It could be a $10 donation or a $100 donation. No amount is too small, and certainly no amount is too large either. Here's the phone number to call to speak to one of our volunteers, 845-482-4141. That's 845-482-4141. And throughout today, tomorrow, and Thursday, we'll be taking a break from our fund drive to chat with community leaders from across the WJFF listening area as part of our Community Check-In series. Community check-ins continue now. We're talking with Rabbi Samuel Fishbain from Congregation Beth Sinai. Rabbi, I wonder if you'd tell our listeners about maybe some upcoming events that the synagogue is having.
We're having a very, very special, distinguished, and a well-attended event from all circles, from Jews and non-Jews and politicians, on August 20th at 10 o'clock, Saturday evening at our synagogue, 36 Lake Street, Conneaunga Lake, New York. You can reach us at 845-583-7374. It's a program with music and humor and politicians, public servants.
Will there be food? That's my...
I can't hear.
Will there be food? Will there be food?
Of course.
Okay,
all
right.
Very elaborate menu.
Good.
A very, very elaborate menu will be served. And generally, whoever comes once comes again and again and again. It's a very well-attended affair. We're going to honor two special guests. A very prominent doctor, Dr. and Mrs. Leon Fuchs, will be honored at the dinner. And Dr. and Mrs. Leon and Frida Fuchs and Mr. and Mrs. Jean and Susan Stevens will be honored at the dinner. There's going to be music and going to be a comedian as well. And I myself am going to add whatever I can as well.
Oh, the comedian is not you. It's somebody else.
I believe so. Although I'll tell you, we have in our community the White Lake Estates, and every Saturday evening from July 4th until Labor Day, they have for the 200 guests, 200 homeowners in the White Lake Estates. They have a show and a comedian. So I always make an appearance on the first and the last Saturday evening. I come on July 4th to say hello and tell them we're here. I tell them that that office of doctors making house calls, that vanished from the scenes. The only one that make house calls are rabbis. So we're here to help them any way we can. And then on Labor Day, say goodbye. And of course, there has to be some interjected with humor. So after one lady approached me, she says to me, Rabbi, she said, I've been listening now for 6 years. I must confess that the first year, the second year, the third year, I thought to myself, you have to come to a small town to learn ingenuity. I thought to myself, what a brainstorm. I thought to myself, your humor was so good, they took a comedian, dressed him up like a rabbi. He said, it wasn't after the third year I realized you're not a comedian at all, you're a rabbi. So whatever I can add, I add as well.
Well, Rabbi, we're just about out of time, but I would like to ask, can you repeat the contact information for the synagogue, the telephone number and the address?
How generous and kind of you, Adam. It's Congregation Beth Sinai, White Lake Torah Center, 845-583-7374. The address is 36 Lake Street. Some GPS, most of them take us as Kanianga Lake.
Ooh, careful there.
12749.
You managed to get that out.
Yeah, and some take us as White Lake 12786.
Okay.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Fishbain, for joining us here on Community Check-ins. Thank you for taking the time to drive out today and speak with us. I really appreciate it.
You're magnificent. How are you? Oh, my goodness.
We've been speaking with Rabbi Samuel Fishbain from Congregation Beth Sinai in Kanianga Lake, New York, as part of our Community Check-in series. Coming up in just a few minutes, we'll be interviewing Nicole Slevin from Cornell Cooperative Extension of Sullivan County here on WJFF. Thanks for listening.